The weight of her words settled heavily across the entire fleet. Thousands of soldiers, trained for 1,000 years to believe in their empire's unstoppable power, now understood, perhaps for the first time, what true strength actually looked like. It did not look like massive ships or powerful weapons. It looked like quiet patience, calm control, and the ability to destroy everything while choosing not to. "I understand, Captain Voss," Drago said, his voice steady despite everything he was feeling inside. "I will make certain this message reaches every commander in the Dominion." Elena nodded slowly. "Thank you, Commander. I believe that's a wise decision." She paused for a moment, glancing one more time at the massive fleet surrounding her small ship. Then, almost gently, she added one final thought. "For what it's worth, Commander, I don't think humans and Kryolans need to be enemies. Your empire is old, experienced, and powerful in ways my people are still learning to understand. Perhaps one day, when trust has been earned on both sides, we could speak again. Not as strangers testing each other's strength, but as two peoples trying to build something better." Drago studied her face carefully, searching once more for any sign of deception or hidden threat. He found none, only quiet sincerity. "I would like that, Captain Voss," he said finally. Elena offered a small, genuine smile. Then perhaps this wasn't such a bad first meeting after all, despite how it started. With that, the connection ended, and her image faded from the screen. For a long moment, nobody on the Thalzor's bridge spoke. The tension that had filled the ship for the past several hours slowly began to ease, replaced by a heavy, thoughtful silence. Drago turned to Tessic. "Status of the human ship?" "Powering down, Commander," Tessic said, checking his readings. "Its energy levels are slowly returning to normal. It appears she truly does not intend to attack us." Drago nodded slowly, letting out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He turned to Kor. "Your theory was correct." "It seems so, Commander," Kor said quietly. "Though I confess, I take no satisfaction in being right about something so dangerous." Drago walked to the center of the bridge, looking out at his fleet through the main window. 200 warships, still massive, still powerful, but no longer feeling quite as unstoppable as they had a few hours earlier. "Order the fleet to stand down from combat alert," he said. "We are leaving human space peacefully." "Yes, Commander," Tessic said, quickly relaying the order. As the massive Kryolan fleet slowly began preparing to retreat, Drago thought about Officer Rax, still being held in the cannon bay under guard. He would need to be dealt with, of course. His actions had nearly caused a war that could have ended countless lives, both human and Kryolan. But more than that, Drago found himself thinking about something deeper, something that would stay with him long after this day ended. For 1,000 years, the Kryolan Dominion had judged other species by their technology, their weapons, and their ships. They had believed that strength could always be measured, always be calculated, always be predicted through numbers and scans. But humanity had shown him something different today. A quiet strength that could not be measured by weapons alone. A confidence built not on the size of their ships, but on something harder to see. Patience, control, and the wisdom to know when not to use the power they held. Drago realized, standing there on his bridge, that his empire had learned an important lesson that day. Not about human weapons, or human ships, or human power. They had learned about human character. And that, he suspected, was far more dangerous and far more valuable than any weapon could ever be. As the Kryolan fleet slowly retreated into the darkness of space, disappearing one by one into hidden folds that would carry them far from human territory, Elena Voss sat quietly in her chair aboard the ISS Wren, watching them leave. She let out a long, tired breath, the calm mask she had worn throughout the entire encounter finally softening into genuine exhaustion. "Well," she said quietly to herself, "that could have gone much worse." A soft beep sounded from her console. A new message had arrived, sent from Earth's Deep Space Command, the organization responsible for monitoring exactly these kinds of first encounters. She opened the message and read it carefully. "Captain Voss, we received your full report on the Kryolan encounter. Command is pleased with the outcome. No casualties, no unnecessary conflict, and a potential future ally instead of a permanent enemy. Well done. Elena smiled slightly, though tiredness still showed clearly on her face. One more thing, the message continued. Command would like to remind you that not every species we encounter will react as calmly as the Cryolans eventually did. Please continue exercising caution on your next assignment. Elena leaned back in her chair, looking out at the empty space where the massive alien fleet had been just moments before. She thought about Commander Drago Vex and the genuine respect she had seen growing in his eyes by the end of their conversation. She thought about the countless other species scattered across the galaxy, watching quietly, waiting to see how humanity would handle its first true encounters with powerful alien empires. Humanity was still young in the eyes of the galaxy, still small, still in many ways an unknown mystery to species far older and more experienced than themselves. But today, one small ship, one calm captain, and one carefully guarded secret had proven something important. Something that would slowly begin spreading across star systems, whispered between traders, warned about among pirates, and carefully noted in the official records of empires far more powerful than Earth itself. Humanity was not to be underestimated, not because of the size of their ships, not because of the strength of their weapons, but because of something far harder to measure, and far more dangerous to challenge. Their quiet, unshakable confidence. Elena closed her eyes for a moment, allowing herself a brief rest after the tense encounter. Then, with a small, tired smile, she opened a new communication channel, preparing to send her full report back to Deep Space Command. Somewhere far away in the depths of unknown space, other alien empires were beginning to hear whispers of what had happened near that small, dead moon. Whispers of a human ship that had turned 200 warships into nothing more than cautious, careful allies without firing a single shot of its own. And across the galaxy, slowly but surely, one simple lesson began to spread among every species who heard the story. Never underestimate the quiet ones, especially when they're human. Deep inside the Thalzor in the secondary cannon bay on Deck 7, Officer Rack stood alone at the weapons control console, his hands moving quickly and angrily across the glowing panel. Sweat covered his forehead. His eyes were wide, filled with a mixture of anger, fear, and wounded pride. He had listened to the entire conversation between Drago and the human captain through the ship's internal communication system. Every word of it had made his anger grow stronger. "Then we talk," the human woman had said, as if she were speaking to an equal, as if the mighty Cryolan Dominion needed her permission for anything. "None of them made that mistake twice," she had said, casually mentioning the deaths of countless enemies, as if it meant nothing at all. Rax could not accept it. He would not accept it. The Cryolan Dominion was the greatest power in known space. They did not sit quietly and talk with primitive species who dared to threaten them. They showed strength. They showed dominance. That was how the Dominion had survived for 1,000 years, and Rax refused to be part of the generation that abandoned that strength out of fear. A primitive species, he muttered to himself, his fingers moving faster across the console. Threatening the entire Dominion fleet, and our commander wants to talk. Cowardice. Pure cowardice. The cannon bay's systems hummed to life around him. Powerful weapons designed to tear through enemy warships slowly charging with deadly energy. Rax believed, in his angry, wounded pride, that he was doing the right thing. He believed that one clean, powerful strike against the small human ship would prove once and for all that the Dominion's strength could not be questioned or threatened by anyone, regardless of strange scanner readings or mysterious energy theories. He did not know about Kor's warning. He did not understand the danger of what he was about to do. He believed he was about to save the Dominion's honor. He was about to make the worst mistake in Cryolan history. "Rax, stop immediately." The voice came from the cannon bay's entrance. Drago had arrived, running as fast as his legs could carry him, several security officers close behind. Rax turned, his hand hovering over the final firing command. "Commander, someone has to protect the Dominion's honor. You would let that thing threaten us and just talk?" "Stand down, Rax. That is a direct order," Drago shouted, moving quickly toward the console, I won't let us look weak in front of a primitive species, Rax shouted back, his voice cracking with emotion. I won't. You don't understand what you're about to do, Drago said, desperately trying to reach him in time. That ship absorbs energy. If you fire on it, you will only make it stronger. For a brief moment, doubt flickered across Rax's face. But his pride, wounded and burning, pushed the doubt aside. Then we'll fire everything we have, Rax said, his finger pressing down hard on the console. And it still won't be enough to stop the entire Dominion fleet. Rax, no! It was too late. The powerful cannon on Deck 7 fired, sending a massive bolt of blue energy screaming across space, directly toward the small, quiet human ship still floating peacefully among the Cryolan fleet. On the bridge, every officer froze in horror, watching the weapon fire streak across the main screen toward the ISS Wren. Inside her ship, Elena Voss did not even flinch. She had been expecting this. She had seen this exact moment happen before, more times than she cared to remember. Proud, angry officers who could not accept being spoken to as equals, who needed to prove their strength through violence rather than words. She sat calmly in her chair, watching the incoming weapon fire on her screen, and let out a small, tired sigh. There's always one, she murmured quietly to herself. The massive bolt of energy struck the Wren's hull directly. For a brief moment, a bright flash of light lit up the darkness of space, so bright that officers on the Thalzor's bridge had to shield their eyes. When the light faded, everyone expected to see wreckage, broken metal, debris floating silently where the small human ship had once been. Instead, they saw the ISS Wren, completely undamaged, floating exactly where it had been before. Except now, its hull glowed slightly brighter than before, faint streams of blue-white energy flowing gently across its surface like water rippling after a stone had been thrown into it. The ship had absorbed the attack completely, and on every screen across the Kraylan fleet, the ship's energy levels, already alarmingly high, suddenly spiked even higher, climbing past numbers nobody on the bridge had believed were possible. Silence fell across the Thalzor's bridge. Every officer stared at the screen in stunned disbelief. Drago stood frozen in the cannon bay, staring at Rax, whose face had gone completely pale, his earlier anger replaced instantly by pure, overwhelming fear. What have I done? Rax whispered. On the main screen, Captain Elena Voss's image reappeared, her expression no longer calm and friendly. Now her face carried something colder, more serious, a quiet warning, backed by an unmistakable strength. Commander Vex, she said, her voice steady but firm. I believe your officer just made a very serious mistake. Drago, still standing in the cannon bay beside a trembling Rax, felt his stomach drop. He had tried to prevent this. He had tried to choose the wiser path. But one moment of uncontrolled pride had undone everything. Captain Voss, Drago said slowly, walking quickly back toward the bridge. I take full responsibility for this action. It was not authorized, it was not. I understand, Commander, Elena interrupted gently, though her voice remained firm. I know it wasn't your order, but intentions won't change what happens next. Drago reached the bridge, breathing heavily, his eyes fixed on the screen showing the human ship's rapidly climbing energy levels. What happens next? He asked quietly, almost afraid of the answer. Elena's expression softened slightly, though the seriousness remained in her eyes. Now, she said calmly, I show you exactly why every enemy who has ever attacked this ship regretted it. The bridge fell into stunned silence once more, every officer watching helplessly as the small, glowing human ship began to move for the first time since the encounter began. Slowly, calmly, almost gracefully, turning to face the very heart of the massive Kryolan fleet. For a long moment, nobody on the Thalzor moved. 200 warships, thousands of soldiers, weapons capable of destroying entire planets. And all of it stood frozen, watching one small, glowing human ship slowly turn to face them. Fleet Commander Drago Vex stood on his bridge, his hands gripping the edge of the control panel so tightly his knuckles had turned pale. Beside him, Tessek stared at his screen, unable to look away from the numbers still climbing higher and higher. "Commander?" Tessic whispered. "The Wren's energy levels have stopped rising. They have reached their peak." "How high?" Drago asked, though part of him did not want to know the answer. Tessic swallowed hard. "Enough to match the combined firepower of our entire fleet, Commander. All 200 ships." The words hit the bridge like a physical blow. A few officers stepped back from their stations without realizing it. Others simply stared at the small ship on the screen, their minds struggling to accept what their instruments were telling them. One tiny ship. The power of an entire fleet. "She warned us," Kor said quietly, almost to himself. "She warned us not to test the theory." Drago said nothing. He was thinking about Rax, still standing frozen in the cannon bay, his face white with the horror of what he had done. He was thinking about Voska's old report, laughed at and forgotten for years. He was thinking about vanished pirate fleets and silent raiders who had never returned home. He had led 60 invasions. He had never once been afraid of an enemy before this moment. On the main screen, the ISS Wren completed its slow turn, now facing directly toward the center of the Creolan fleet. Its hull glowed steadily now, soft streams of blue-white light flowing across its surface like a heartbeat. Inside the ship, Elena Voss remained seated, calm as ever. She looked at her own screen, watching the frightened faces on the Creolan bridge, and felt something close to sympathy for them. She had seen this exact fear before, many times, in many different alien species. It was always the same. Confidence collapsing the moment true power was finally revealed. She reached forward and opened a channel to the entire Cryolan fleet, not just the flagship. She wanted every ship, every soldier, every officer to hear what she was about to say. "This is Captain Elena Voss of the human vessel ISS Wren," she said, her voice calm but carrying clearly across every Cryolan ship in the fleet. "I am speaking to all of you now, not just your commander." On the Thalzor's bridge, Drago listened silently, along with every officer around him. "A short time ago," Elena continued, "one of your officers fired a weapon at my ship without authorization. That weapon did not damage my ship. Instead, it made my ship stronger, as I'm sure your scientists have already discovered." She paused, letting her words settle across the fleet before continuing. "I want to be very clear about something important. I am not here to destroy your fleet. I am not here to start a war. If I wanted to use the power I now hold, believe me, we would not be having this conversation. There would be nothing left to talk to." A cold silence spread through the Thalzor's bridge. Every officer understood exactly what she meant. "But I am not going to do that," Elena said. "Because I don't believe in destroying an entire fleet because of one officer's mistake. I don't believe in punishing thousands of soldiers for the pride of a single angry man." Drago closed his eyes briefly, feeling a strange mixture of relief and shame wash over him. "However," Elena continued, her voice growing firmer now, "I do need all of you to understand something clearly, so that this mistake never happens again. Not with my ship, and not with any other human ship you may encounter in the future." She stood up from her chair and walked toward her ship's window, looking out at the massive fleet surrounding her tiny vessel. "Humanity does not seek war," she said. "We have fought enough wars among ourselves to know exactly how much pain and loss they bring. We do not want to conquer your empire. We do not want your worlds, your resources, or your soldiers' lives." She paused for a moment. Her expression grew serious. "But we will not be tested. We will not be attacked without response. Every species that has made that mistake before you has learned this lesson permanently. I would prefer, Commander Vex, that your empire learns it differently." Drago stepped forward, finally finding his voice again. "Captain Voss, I give you my word, as fleet commander of this Dominion fleet, that this attack was not ordered by me, and it will not happen again." "I believe you, Commander," Elena said, her tone softening slightly. "I could see the fear on your officer's face even from here. That wasn't your decision. It was his failure to control his pride." She looked directly into the camera, her eyes steady and calm. "But understand this clearly, Commander. The next time a Creolan ship, any Creolan ship under any commander, attacks a human vessel without cause, there may not be another warning. There may not be another conversation. There will simply be an ending. It's not because we don't understand danger, Elena continued. We understand it very well. Humans have fought wars against each other for thousands of years. We know exactly what danger looks like. She paused. We simply don't waste our fear on things we've already prepared for. The bridge was silent. Every Kryolan officer listened closely to her words, translated smoothly through their systems. You scanned my ship, Elena said. You found something you couldn't explain. That should tell you something important, Commander. Not that you should attack. Not that you should panic. Just that maybe, just maybe, you don't fully understand what you're dealing with yet. Drago's hands tightened at his sides. Part of him, the proud commander who had led 60 successful invasions, wanted to prove this small ship wrong immediately, to show his fleet's true power and end this uncertainty with one quick strike. But another part of him, the smarter, more careful part, remembered Voska's old report. He remembered the vanished pirate fleets. He remembered the numbers still glowing on his screen. Enough power to match 20 warships, hidden inside a ship that looked like nothing. What do you want? Drago finally asked. Elena's expression softened slightly, just for a moment. I want the same thing you probably want, Commander. To avoid a fight that doesn't need to happen. But that choice isn't only mine to make. Before Drago could respond, one of his officers near the back of the bridge, a younger Kryolan named Rax, known for his short temper and eagerness to prove himself, stepped forward angrily. Commander, this is ridiculous, Rax shouted, his voice loud enough for others to hear. We are letting one tiny ship talk to us like we're the weak ones. Give the order to attack. Let us show this primitive creature what real power looks like. Silence, Rax, Drago said firmly, not turning around. But Rax did not stay silent. His pride, and perhaps his fear disguised as anger, pushed him forward. Commander, with respect, we cannot let one ship humiliate the entire Dominion fleet like this. My weapons crew is ready. Give the order, and I will end this uncertainty myself. Drago turned sharply, his eyes filled with warning. I said silence. You will not act without my direct order, is that understood? Rax's jaw tightened, his hands curling into fists at his sides, but he said nothing more. Stepping back into the shadows of the bridge, his anger simmering beneath the surface. Elena, still watching everything through the screen, had seen the entire exchange. Her calm expression did not change, but something behind her eyes shifted slightly. A quiet, careful awareness, like someone who had seen this kind of situation before and knew exactly how dangerous it could become. Commander, she said softly, I would keep a close eye on officers like that one if I were you. Pride and fear make a very dangerous combination. Drago did not respond right away. He simply stared at her through the screen, his mind racing with questions, doubts, and a growing, uncomfortable feeling that his fleet, his mighty, unstoppable fleet, might be standing far closer to danger than any of them had realized. We will speak again soon, Captain Voss, Drago said finally, his voice quieter now. I look forward to it, Commander. Elena replied. Before the screen went dark once more, the bridge remained silent for a long moment after the connection ended. Every officer stood frozen, unsure of what to think, what to feel, or what would happen next. Drago turned to look at Rax, standing quietly in the corner, his eyes still burning with anger and wounded pride. Something about the young officer's expression made Drago's stomach tighten with worry. He had commanded fleets for many years. He knew his soldiers well, and he knew, deep down, that pride like Rax's, the kind that refused to accept being made to look small, rarely stayed silent for long. Increase security around the weapons systems, Drago said quietly to Tessic, and keep a close watch on Officer Rax. Tessic nodded nervously. His eyes glanced briefly toward Rax before returning to his commander. Yes, sir. Outside, in the cold silence of space, the small human ship continued to float calmly between the massive alien warships, its strange, powerful energy still glowing steadily beneath its quiet, unassuming surface. Nobody on the Creolan fleet knew it yet, but the true danger they faced that day would not come from the mysterious human ship at all. It would come from within their own fleet, from pride, from fear, and from one angry officer who refused to accept the idea that his powerful empire might not be as unbeatable as he had always believed. And that single mistake, born from wounded pride, was about to change everything. 2 hours passed. On the bridge of the Thalzor, the mood had changed completely. The loud confidence from earlier was gone. In its place was a tense, careful silence. Officers spoke in quiet voices. Nobody made jokes anymore. Nobody laughed at the small human ship floating peacefully among 200 warships. Fleet Commander Drago Vex stood in front of the main screen, his arms crossed, his eyes fixed on the strange energy readings that refused to make sense. "Tessic," he said, "give me a full report. Everything we know so far." Tessic walked forward holding a data pad. His hands were steadier now, though his voice still carried a slight nervous edge. "Commander, here is what we have confirmed. The human ship, the ISS Wren, is small, smaller than one of our shuttles. Its outer hull shows no visible weapons, no cannons, no missile bays, nothing that matches known weapon designs." "And the energy?" Drago asked. "The energy is the strange part, Commander," Tessic said. "It is not being used for weapons as far as we can tell. It is not being used for shields either, at least not any shield technology we recognize. The scanner believes the energy is simply stored, sitting inside the ship, waiting." "Waiting for what?" Drago asked. Tessic hesitated. "We don't know, sir." Kor, the older science officer, stepped forward with a new theory, one he had been working on for the last hour. "Commander, I have a possible explanation, though it sounds unusual." "Go on," Drago said. "I believe," Kor said slowly, "that the human ship's hull itself is the source of this power. Not a machine inside the ship, but the outer shell of the ship. A special material, perhaps." Drago frowned. "Explain." Kor brought up an image on the screen, showing the outer surface of the ISS Wren, magnified many times. "Look closely at this pattern here, along the hull. These thin lines, almost invisible to normal scanners. I believe this is a special layer of material built into the ship's skin." "What does it do?" Drago asked. "Based on the readings," Kor said carefully, "I believe this material absorbs energy. Any energy that touches it, weapon fire, radiation, even the natural energy of space itself, gets pulled inside and stored, rather than causing damage." The bridge went quiet as everyone considered this idea. "You are saying," Drago said slowly, "that if we fired our weapons at that ship instead of destroying it, it would only make it stronger," Kor finished. Nobody spoke for a long moment. The idea was almost impossible to believe. A weapon that grew more powerful the more it was attacked. A defense that turned every enemy strike into fuel. "This is only a theory, Commander," Kor added quickly, seeing the tension rising on Drago's face. "I cannot confirm it fully, but it would explain the missing pirate fleets. It would explain the vanished raiders. If every attack against this ship, or ships like it, only made the human vessel stronger, then any enemy foolish enough to attack would eventually face a power far greater than their own. A power they themselves had helped create." Drago's mind raced back to Vosika's old report. A confidence that does not match their technology. Perhaps, he realized now, the confidence did match the technology. The Cryolans simply hadn't understood it yet. "If this is true," Drago said quietly, "then that ship could have destroyed every enemy that ever attacked it using nothing but the power those enemies gave it themselves." "Yes, Commander," Kor said. "And if the Wren has been traveling through dangerous space for even a few years, absorbing energy from every threat it faced, then it could be holding an enormous amount of power right now." Drago finished, his voice heavy with the weight of the realization. Tessic's console beeped suddenly, drawing everyone's attention. "Commander, incoming message. It's the human ship again." "Put it on screen," Drago said. The image of Captain Elena Voss appeared once more. She looked exactly the same as before, calm, relaxed, sitting comfortably in her chair. But now, knowing what they knew, or at least suspected, her calmness felt different to everyone watching. It no longer looked like foolishness or ignorance. It looked like quiet, patient confidence. "Commander Vex," Elena said politely, "I see your scientists have been busy. I imagine you've discovered something interesting by now." Drago studied her carefully. "Your ship's hull," he said. "It absorbs energy. All energy, including weapons fire." Elena smiled slightly, neither confirming nor denying his words directly. "That's a very good theory, Commander." "Is it true?" Drago asked. "I think," Elena said carefully, "that some things are better left as theories, especially when proving them would require testing them directly." Drago understood her meaning immediately. She was warning him gently but clearly not to attack the ship to find out the truth. "How many enemies have tested this theory before us?" Drago asked. Elena's expression grew slightly more serious, though her calm voice never changed. "More than I'd like to remember, Commander. Pirates, raiders, a few overly proud warlords who thought a single human ship would be an easy target." She paused. "None of them made that mistake twice." "Because they are all dead," Drago said quietly. "Because they chose violence when they could have chosen conversation," Elena corrected gently. "There's a difference, Commander, even if the outcome looks similar from the outside." Drago's fists tightened at his sides, though he kept his voice steady. "And if I choose conversation, what happens then?" For the first time since the encounter began, Elena's calm expression shifted into something warmer. Not quite a smile, but close. "Then we talk," she said simply. "Like two people trying to understand each other instead of two enemies trying to destroy each other." The bridge remained silent, every officer listening closely, waiting to see what their commander would decide. Drago took a slow breath. In 60 invasions, he had never once spoken with an enemy before deciding their fate. Scan them, judge them, decide. That was the rule. That was how the Dominion had remained powerful for 1,000 years. But this situation was different. This was not a weak species to be judged and conquered. This was something else entirely, something the Dominion's ancient rules had never prepared them for. "Very well, Captain Voss," Drago said finally. "We will talk." Elena nodded, relief showing briefly on her face before her calm expression returned. "Thank you, Commander. I believe that's the wisest decision you've made today." But before Drago could respond, a sudden alarm rang out across the bridge, sharp, urgent, and completely unexpected. "Commander," one of the weapons officers shouted. "Unauthorized weapons activation detected. Deck 7, secondary cannon bay." Drago's blood ran cold. "Whose authorization?" The officer checked his screen quickly, his face turning pale. "Commander, it's Officer Rax. He's bypassed the security lock and is preparing to fire on the human ship." "No," Drago said, turning sharply toward the exit. "Stop him immediately." But it was already too late. She was not afraid. She had known this day would come. She had trained for it, prepared for it, and she was ready. She placed her hand gently on the cold glass of the window and whispered to herself, almost like a promise, "Let's see what you're really made of." Behind her, deep inside the ship, something began to wake up. A low hum echoed through the walls, quiet at first, then slowly growing stronger. Lights that had been dim for a long time began to glow brighter, one by one, like a giant creature slowly opening its eyes after a very long sleep. Outside, on the Creolan flagship, alarms suddenly began to ring. "Commander," Tessic shouted, his voice full of fear now. "The human ship's energy signature is rising. It's rising fast." Drago turned back to the main screen. His eyes widened as new numbers flooded across it, climbing higher and higher every second. The entire bridge held its breath. Whatever was about to happen next, one thing had already become very clear to everyone on that ship. They had made a terrible mistake by underestimating this tiny, quiet human vessel. The alarms did not stop. On the bridge of the Thalzor, red lights flashed across every wall. Officers ran from one console to another, shouting numbers that made no sense. The calm, proud atmosphere from before was gone completely. Now there was only noise, confusion, and fear. Fleet Commander Drago Vex stood in the middle of it all, his eyes locked on the small human ship glowing brighter on the main screen. "Someone explain this to me right now," he shouted. Tessic, the science officer, was typing as fast as his fingers could move. Sweat had formed on his gray forehead. "Commander, the ship's power is still climbing. It has already passed the output of one of our own warships, if it keeps rising at this rate." "How is that possible?" Drago cut him off. "That ship is smaller than my personal shuttle." Nobody had an answer. Before we continue, it is important to understand something. To understand why this moment on the bridge was so shocking, we must go back to how the Kryolan Dominion first learned about humans, and why they believed so strongly that humans were weak. 1 year earlier. The Kryolan Dominion was an old empire. For over 1,000 years they had traveled across the stars, moving from system to system, always searching for new worlds and new species. Their ships were the biggest in known space. Their weapons could destroy a planet in less than an hour. Their soldiers were trained from birth to fight and never show fear. In all that time, the Kryolans had only one real rule when meeting a new species: watch first. Scan them. Learn everything about them before deciding what to do. This rule had kept them safe and powerful for centuries. It let them avoid dangerous enemies and easily defeat weak ones. Because of this rule, the Kryolans had never lost a war. Not one, in 1,000 years. When Kryolan scouts first found the planet Earth, they were not impressed. A scout ship, small and hidden, flew close to Earth's orbit and recorded everything it could see. The report that reached the Dominion's leaders was short and simple. Species human. Technology level early space travel. Weapons basic, ships slow, small, poorly armed. Military strength very low. Recommendation: not a threat. Low priority for contact. Based on this report, most Kryolan leaders forgot about Earth completely. There were thousands of other planets to study, many of them far more advanced and more interesting than a small blue world full of primitive ships. But not everyone forgot. A small group of Kryolan traders always looking for new markets decided to visit human space anyway. They wanted to see if humans had anything worth trading: metals, resources, anything useful. What they found surprised them, though not in the way you might expect. Humans were not advanced. Their ships were not fast. Their weapons were not strong. But something about them was different from every other species the Kryolans had ever met. Humans did not scare easily. When the first Kryolan trading ship appeared near a human space station, the humans on board did not panic. They did not run. They did not send frightened messages begging for peace. Instead, they simply opened communication and asked calm, curious questions. Who are you? Where are you from? What do you want? The Kryolan traders were confused. Every other species they had ever met, especially less advanced ones, reacted to first contact with either fear or excitement, sometimes both. But these humans acted almost bored, like meeting aliens was not a big deal at all. One old Kryolan trader, a merchant named Voska, later wrote a report about the encounter. It was a strange report, one that most Kryolan officials laughed at when they read it. The humans are a primitive species, yes, Voska wrote. Their ships are weak, their weapons are simple. And yet I have traded with over 200 species in my lifetime, and I have never met one so calm in the face of the unknown. There is something about them I cannot explain, a confidence that does not match their technology. I recommend further study, not because they are dangerous now, but because I do not understand why they are not afraid. Most people ignored this report. A confident species with weak technology was not a threat. Confidence without power meant nothing in war. The Dominion had defeated many proud species before, species with far better weapons than humans. But Fleet Commander Drago Vex remembered the report. He remembered it because, unlike most Kryolans, he did not believe confidence was meaningless. A creature that is not afraid of something it does not understand, he once said to his officers, is either very foolish or it knows something we do not. Still, even Drago did not expect much from humans. When the Dominion's Council decided it was finally time to make full contact with Earth, to scan them properly and decide their fate, Drago was given command of the fleet sent to do it. He expected an easy job. Scan the humans, confirm they were weak, decide whether to conquer them slowly, or simply leave them alone, as unimportant. He did not expect what was waiting for him near that small, dead moon. Back to the present. On the bridge of the Thalzor, Drago remembered Voska's old report, the one everyone had laughed at years ago. He was not laughing now. A confidence that does not match their technology. Those words felt very different now, watching the energy readings on the small human ship climb higher every second. "Commander," Tessic said, his voice shaking, "I have new information. I ran a search through our old records. There have been incidents before. Small, unexplained incidents, all connected to human space." "What kind of incidents?" Drago asked, not taking his eyes off the screen. Tessic pulled up old files, his hands trembling slightly. 6 years ago, a Grathnok raiding fleet, 12 ships, entered human space to attack a small mining colony. The Grathnok were experienced pirates, feared across many systems. "And?" Drago asked. "All 12 ships disappeared," Tessic said. "No wreckage was ever found. No distress signals were received. They simply vanished. The Grathnok Council sent a second fleet to investigate. That fleet found nothing. No battle, no debris, no answers. They gave up and never returned to human space again." Drago's jaw tightened. "Why was I never told this?" "It was marked as unimportant, Commander," Tessic said quietly. "The official report said the Grathnok fleet likely got lost or suffered a technical failure. Nobody connected it to humans directly because it seemed impossible that such a primitive species could defeat 12 armed ships." Kor, the older science officer, stepped forward, his face serious. "There is more, Commander. 3 years ago, a group of space pirates known as the Ashen Hand attacked a human cargo convoy. Only 3 ships, poorly armed according to our records. The pirates had 15 ships, heavily armed, experienced fighters." "What happened?" Drago asked, though part of him already feared the answer. "The pirates were never heard from again either," Kor said. "Their base went silent. No survivors, no messages, no explanation. The human convoy continued its journey completely undisturbed, as if nothing had happened at all." The bridge went quiet again, the earlier panic replaced now by something colder. Understanding. "Every time," Drago said slowly, almost to himself. "Every time someone underestimated them and attacked, that enemy simply disappeared." "Yes, Commander," Tessic said. "And every time," Drago continued, "our own reports called these events unexplained or unimportant because nobody believed a species with such weak technology could be responsible." Nobody on the bridge answered. They did not need to. The answer was clear now, glowing right in front of them on the main screen. Drago turned to look again at the image of Captain Elena Voss, standing calmly by her ship's window, watching the alien fleet with quiet patience. She did not look worried. She did not look like someone in danger. She looked like someone waiting. "Commander," Tessic said suddenly, his voice tight. "The human ship's energy has stopped rising. It has reached a stable level." "How does it compare to our fleet?" Drago asked. Tessic checked his numbers twice before answering, as if afraid to say the words out loud. "Commander, based on this reading, that single ship now holds enough stored power to match the combined output of 20 of our warships." A stunned silence fell across the bridge. 20 ships, Drago repeated quietly. "One tiny vessel, holding the power of 20 warships. We do not know what kind of weapons it might have," Kor added carefully. "The scan could not identify a weapon system at all. It only detected raw energy, stored inside the ship in a way our scanners have never seen before. It is possible this energy is not for weapons. It could be for shields or propulsion or something else entirely. Or," Drago said darkly, "it could be for all 3. He walked slowly toward the front of the bridge, staring out at the massive Creolan fleet spread across space. 200 warships, thousands of years of military tradition, countless victories in countless wars, and one small, calm human ship, sitting quietly in the middle of it all, holding a secret none of them understood. "Open a channel to the human ship again," Drago ordered. "Yes, Commander," Tessic said, quickly setting up the connection. A moment later, Elena Voss appeared on the screen once more. She had moved back to her captain's chair, sitting with her legs crossed, looking completely relaxed, as if she had been expecting this call. "Commander," she said politely, before Drago could even speak. "Back so soon?" Drago studied her face carefully, searching for any sign of fear, any small crack in her calm expression. He found none. "Your ship's energy readings," Drago said slowly, "are unusual. We would like an explanation." Elena smiled slightly. "I told you already. You'll find out soon enough." "That is not an answer," Drago said, his voice growing sharper. "No," Elena agreed calmly. "It's a warning." Drago's eyes narrowed. "A warning? You are one ship, Captain. We are 200. Do you understand your position?" Elena tilted her head slightly, as if thinking about his question carefully. Then she answered, her voice still calm, still polite, but with something new underneath it now, something firm. "Commander, do you know why humans don't often show fear when we meet new species?" Drago did not answer, but he was listening closely now. Space was silent, cold, black, and endless. Near a dead gray moon, far from any star, a single ship floated without sound. Its name was written in small white letters on its hull, ISS Wren. It was not a big ship. It was not a warship, at least not one that looked dangerous. It was small, thin, almost fragile-looking against the darkness around it. Inside the ship, only one light was on. A woman sat in the captain's chair, her boots resting on the edge of the control panel. Her name was Captain Elena Voss. She was human, and she was completely alone, millions of kilometers from home. She held a cup of coffee in her hand. Steam rose slowly from it. She looked calm, almost bored, like she was waiting for a bus, not sitting in the middle of unknown space. Then, her screen blinked. A red light appeared. Then another. Then 5 more. Elena leaned forward and looked closely. Her eyes did not widen. Her hands did not shake. She simply set her coffee down and said quietly, "Ah, there you are." Outside her ship, space began to change. One by one, giant shapes appeared from nothing. They came out of hidden folds in space like monsters stepping out of shadows. These were not small ships. They were massive. Each one was the size of a city. Sharp metal wings stuck out from their sides. Blue lights glowed along their hulls like angry eyes. This was the Kryolan Dominion fleet. The Kryolans were not a young species. They were old, powerful, and proud. For over 1,000 years they had traveled from star to star, finding new worlds and new species. They had a simple rule for every new species they found: scan them, judge them, then decide. If a species was weak, the Kryolans would either destroy them or take their planet for themselves. If a species was strong, the Kryolans would talk, trade, or sometimes make an alliance. But strength was rare. In 1,000 years, only a few species had ever been called strong by the Kryolan Dominion. Today, they had found something new. A species called humans. A species from a small blue planet called Earth. The Kryolans did not know much about humans yet. Their scouts had found only one human ship, this one, drifting near a dead moon. It looked weak. It looked small. It looked like nothing. But the Kryolans never skipped their rule. Scan first. Always scan first. Inside the largest Kryolan ship, the flagship called Thalzor, the bridge was full of activity. This ship was the heart of the fleet, home to 5,000 Kryolan warriors, scientists, and officers. At the center of the bridge stood Fleet Commander Drago Vex, a tall alien with gray skin and deep black eyes. He had led fleets into over 60 invasions. He had seen empires fall. He had seen entire species disappear from history because they were too weak to survive. He looked at the small human ship on his main screen and almost laughed. That is it? He said, his voice deep and rough. That tiny thing is the great and mighty human species everyone keeps whispering about. Beside him stood his science officer, a smaller Creolan named Tessic. Tessic was nervous, always nervous but very smart. He was in charge of running the scans on new species. Commander, Tessic said, our scouts only found one ship. There could be more nearby, hidden. One ship, Drago repeated, shaking his head. One tiny ship, against my entire fleet of 200 warships. He smiled, showing sharp teeth. Run the scan, Tessic. Let us see what kind of joke the universe has sent us today. Tessic nodded quickly and turned to his console. His fingers moved fast across the glowing buttons. Scanning now, Commander, he said. A beam of soft blue light shot out from the Thalzor and touched the small human ship. This scan was special cryolan technology. It could read almost everything about a ship and its crew in seconds. It could measure a ship's weapons, its power, its shields, even its speed. But most importantly, it could read the crew's biology. Heart rate, breathing, brain activity, fear. In every single first contact the Cryolans had ever made, the scan showed one thing clearly: fear. Every species, no matter how proud, felt fear when 200 warships surrounded their world or their ship. Fear was normal. Fear was expected. Fear told the Cryolans how a species would react. Would they fight? Would they run? Or would they beg for mercy? Tessic watched his screen carefully as numbers began to appear. Commander, the scan is almost done, he said. Ship size, small. Weapons detected, minimal. Shields, weak, almost nothing. He paused. This confirms it, sir. This is a very primitive species. Their ship poses no threat. Drago nodded, unsurprised. As expected, continue the scan. Show me their fear levels. Tessic pressed another button. The screen changed, now showing a small image of Captain Elena Voss sitting alone in her ship, her body's readings displayed beside her. Heart rate normal, breathing calm, brain activity relaxed. Tessic blinked. He checked the numbers again. He tapped the screen twice, thinking it was broken. That is strange, he mumbled. Drago turned his head slowly. What is strange? Her readings, Commander, Tessic said, his voice a little shaky now. She shows no fear. None at all. Her heart rate has not changed since the scan began. The bridge went quiet for a moment. A few other officers turned their heads to look at the screen. Drago walked closer, staring at the image of the human woman sitting calmly in her chair, drinking coffee, as if 200 warships were not even there. Perhaps your scanner is broken, Drago said, but his voice had lost a little of its earlier confidence. I checked it twice, sir, Tessic said. It is working perfectly. Her body is simply not afraid. Drago frowned. In 60 invasions, he had never seen this. Every creature felt fear. Fear was built into all living things. It was how they survived. A creature without fear should not exist. Unless she does not understand the danger she is in, Drago said slowly, almost to himself. Yes, that must be it. She is simply too primitive to understand what our fleet means. Continue the scan, Tessic. Complete it fully. Tessic nodded and turned back to his console. His hands were shaking slightly now, though he tried to hide it. Yes, Commander. Running full deep scan now. The blue light around the human ship grew brighter. This was the final part of the scan. The deepest level. The one that read a ship's full history, its true power source, and any hidden systems. This scan usually took only a few seconds for ships this small, but this time it did not finish in a few seconds. 10 seconds passed, then 20, then a full minute. Tessic's screen began flashing red warnings. Words appeared and disappeared too fast to read clearly. Numbers climbed higher, then reset to 0, then climbed again. Commander, Tessic said, his voice now trembling. The scan, it is not completing normally. What do you mean? Drago snapped, walking quickly back to the console. The scan keeps finding new data, Tessic said. Every time I think it is finished, it finds something else, something the scanner has never recorded before. On the main screen, strange symbols began appearing next to the image of the small human ship, numbers that made no sense, energy readings that should have been impossible for a ship this size. One of the older officers on the bridge, a scientist named Kor, walked over and looked at the numbers. His gray face turned pale, almost white. "Commander," Kor said quietly, "these numbers, if this scan is correct, that little ship is producing more energy than 3 of our own warships combined." Drago stared at the screen, his sharp teeth no longer showing in a smile. "That is not possible. Look at it. It is smaller than one of our shuttles." "I know, Commander," Kor said. "But the scanner does not lie. Something inside that tiny ship, something we cannot see, is far more powerful than it should be." The bridge, once loud with confident chatter, was now completely silent. Every officer stared at the main screen, watching the small human ship float peacefully in space, as if nothing strange was happening at all. Tessik's hands moved across his console one more time, trying to lock in the final results of the scan. His screen glowed bright red. A single word appeared in large letters. "Unknown." "Commander," Tessik whispered, "the scan has finished, but it says the ship's true power source is unknown. It cannot identify it. In 50 years of my service, I have never seen this scanner fail to identify something." Drago stood frozen, staring at the small human ship on the screen. For the first time in a long time, the great fleet commander did not know what to say. Someone on the bridge whispered, almost too quiet to hear, "That's not possible." The words hung in the air like a heavy fog. Drago's mind raced. He thought about his 60 invasions. He thought about every species he had ever conquered. None of them had ever caused his scanner to fail like this. None of them had ever shown zero fear while facing his entire fleet. He looked again at the image of Captain Elena Voss. She had finished her coffee. She was now leaning back in her chair, looking at her own screen with a small, calm smile on her face, almost as if she was watching a show she had already seen before and already knew how it would end. "Send a message to the human ship," Drago said slowly. Ask them what that ship truly is." Tessik nodded and quickly typed the command. A message was sent through the universal translator, across the empty space between the two fleets. "Unknown vessel. State the nature of your ship's power source. Explain your readings immediately." For a moment there was no answer. Then, on the Thalzor's main screen, a new image appeared. It was Elena Voss, looking directly into her camera, her face calm and unreadable. Behind her, the ship's lights flickered gently, almost peacefully. She smiled, a small, polite smile. "You'll find out soon enough," she said simply. Then the screen went black. Silence fell across the bridge of the Thalzor. 200 warships, thousands of soldiers, weapons capable of destroying entire planets, and all of it now stood frozen, staring at one small human ship that refused to explain itself. Drago's fists tightened at his sides. His mind was full of questions with no answers. What was inside that ship? Why did the human captain feel no fear? What kind of power could confuse a scanner that had never failed before? He turned to his crew, his voice lower now, more serious than before. "Bring the fleet to full alert," he ordered. "Something is very wrong here." But it was already too late to fully understand what they were facing. On the small human ship, Elena Voss stood up from her chair and walked slowly toward the ship's main window. She looked out at the massive alien fleet surrounding her. 200 warships, each one far bigger than her tiny vessel.